Hey, thanks for clicking play. If we haven't met yet, my name is Jim D. Welcome to the channel. This channel is focused on guitar and guitar gear and guitar culture and guitar history. If you like that kind of stuff, please consider subscribing and I'll keep making it. So, one thing I know about guitar players is that we love to talk about how we ended up with our guitars. But even more so, we love to talk about the guitars that we used to have and that we wish we had back. This is the story of how I ended up with this 1950s Les Paul Goldtop reissue and the white whale that I sold back in the 1980s that I am kicking myself for selling, and I'm still trying to find one to replace it. If you're a guitarist, you know what I'm talking about. We've all been there. I bought this guitar in October of 2023 at the Gibson Garage in Nashville. But the reason and the way I ended up with this guitar has some history to it. I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and in the late 60s, when my oldest sister was about 12 and I was about 3, she wanted to learn how to play guitar. If you consider that the electric guitar in the 1960s was the iPhone of its day, it was the definitive accessory for any well-appointed teenager. The British invasion had happened, there was surf music and the Summer of Love, and the electric guitar craze was in full swing. And teenagers all over the US and the UK were forming the first garage bands. My parents agreed to indulge my sister under 2 conditions: that they could find a good teacher and a good cheap guitar that she could learn on. Now, many jazz guitarists might recognize the name Dick Longale. Dick Longale was my sister's guitar teacher. Dick Longale was also a serious jazz and bebop musician who taught many serious and talented young jazz guitarists. Not surprisingly, my 12-year-old sister was not one of them, and after just a few difficult lessons, she gave up the guitar, opting instead for long, attractive fingernails. But they did buy from Dick Longale her student guitar, which was this, the Gibson ES-125. This guitar is my Moby Dick. It's my white whale. It's the one that got away. The 125 is kind of a forgotten gem in the world of archtops. So let's take a minute to dig into the history and the specs of the Gibson ES-125. So back in 1941, Gibson introduced the ES-125 as their entry-level archtop electric, taking over from the ES-100. These early examples from 41 and 42 had a 14.5-inch body and a single bridge pickup. During the war, Gibson slowed its production down and they discontinued the ES-125. Gibson reintroduced the ES-125 in 1946, but it was redesigned with a wider 16.25-inch lower bout and roughly a 3.5-inch depth body. It had a standard 24 3/4 scale neck, 19 frets. The pickup changed to a black single-coil dog-eared P90 in the neck position. The bigger body paired with the P90 pickup gave players an incredibly warm, dynamic sound that was really unmatched at the price point, which was about $125. The original pickup had 6 Alnico slug pole pieces, but in 1950, Gibson changed the P90. They transitioned to 6 adjustable poles between 2 Alnico 5-bar magnets, allowing players to really dial in their sound. In 1956, Gibson introduced the thin line ES-125T, and later offerings included a 2 pickup version, the D, and a version with a Florentine cutaway, essentially creating a more affordable version of the ES-175. Now, before we jump into the models, if you like this kind of video and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you hit the like button and ring the bell, I would appreciate it, and when I do a new video, you'll be notified. Let's talk a little bit about the ES-125 model designations and what those look like. It was the ES-125 full-depth non-cutaway archtop with a single P90 pickup. They made those from 1946 to 1970. the ES-125D, which was a full-depth non-cutaway body with two P90 pickups. It's very rare. They only made a small number of those in 1957. The ES-125C, which is a full-depth with a Florentine cutaway, which they produced from 1965 to 1971. The ES-125CD, which is a full-body double pickup P90s with a Florentine cutaway, which they produced from 65 to 71. The ES-125T, which is the thin line, non-cutaway, which they produced from 1956 to 1969. And the ES-125TD, which is the one that my sister had, which was two P90s, no cutaway, thin body, they made from 57 to 64. The ES-125TC, which was a thin body with a cutaway and a single P90 pickup, they produced from 1960 to 1970. And finally, the ES-125TCD, double P90 pickups, Florentine cutaway, produced from 1960 to 1970. Gibson made that design of the ES-125 from 1946 to 1971. It's a long time. And there are a bunch of them out there. Through most of the 1950s, the ES-125 was Gibson's most popular electric guitar model. In fact, according to the Gibson book, Gibson sold more ES-125s than Les Pauls in the 1950s. The version that my parents bought my sister was an ES-125TD, thin body, dual pickup, probably in 1958. My sister's lessons ended and the guitar went back into its chipboard case and then into the back of my closet. And I was given very specific instructions that I was not allowed to touch it because, as I was told, this is a Gibson, it's not a toy. So when I finally took up the guitar myself in 6th grade in 1976, I was still told that I could not touch it because I was not good enough to play this guitar. Maybe someday when you're good enough, they said, but at least it gave me an incentive to practice. It became my white whale. It was the thing I wanted and couldn't get. And it wasn't until I was in a band in junior high that I was finally allowed to play this now 25-year-old guitar. But by that time, I was listening to Judas Priest and the Scorpions and a Tobacco Sunburst jazz box that howled and fed back like crazy whenever I clicked on my distortion pedal. It just wasn't going to cut it. No, what I needed was a Flying V to be a well-appointed teenager in the 1980s. Not any Flying V, specifically this Flying V, a 1980 Dean USA Flying V. That's another guitar that I wish I had back. But I convinced my mom to let me sell the ES-125 to get the V. I think I sold it for about $600. $600. So fast forward 43 years to 2023 and 43 years. Okay, so cut to 2023 and I'm telling my buddy, who's a professional guitarist, a guy named Jimmy Corey, that I'm going to Nashville for work and I'm going to do some vintage guitar shopping and look for an ES-125 because I really want to get that P90 sound I remember as a kid. And he said to me, he said, why don't you just get a Les Paul with P90s? And I said, you know, I already have a Les Paul. I have a custom. He said, I don't need another Les Paul. He said, that's a different animal than the one with the P90s. Look at a Les Paul with P90s. But I was really determined to find an ES-125. So I get to Nashville. I immediately start mapping out my routes to Carter's Vintage Guitars, Gruhn's Guitars, Rumble Seat Music. I had 5 days in Nashville for work, and I'm off at 4 p.m. each day, which was enough time for me to visit these guitar cathedrals. I went to Carter's Guitars. Amazing. I went to Rumble Seat Music. Was awesome. I went to Gruhn's Guitars. Fantastic. Nobody had an ES-125, but Gruhn's did have a mid-90s wine red Les Paul Standard. The guitar was in really nice shape. The guys there were really cool, very accommodating. I think they were asking like $3,200 with the case. They said, play it as much as you want. They let me plug it in their amp room, and I played it for a while, and I texted my buddy, and I said, hey, what do you think of this? And he said, do you love it? And I said, yeah, it's nice. I don't know if I love it. He said, if you don't love it, don't get it. That's not your guitar. on my last day in Nashville, I stop at the Gibson Garage. Now, I'm going to say this is a public service announcement. Do not take your credit card to the Gibson Garage unless you plan to use it. They have the Epiphone section. They have a Kramer section. They have an acoustic section with J200s and all these other beautiful acoustics. They have an Explorer section. They have an ES section. They have an SG section. And they have a Les Paul section. They had 2 Les Pauls there with P90s. And I was about to pull the trigger on the Sunburst one because it was pretty nice. And he was flattering me. But if you go to the Gibson Garage, there is a carousel of guitars that goes all the way around the upper part of the building. Rotating thing of hundreds and hundreds of guitars in all color coordinated. You got Les Pauls and ESs and SGs and Flying Vs and Explorers and one after another, and they're all beautiful. And a Goldtop up there caught my eye. And I said, well, I might as well take a look at it. He said, oh yeah, no problem. Brought it down, brought it to me, but it was relicked. And I'm just not into relic guitars, just not my thing. So he said, well, you know, I think we have one more guitar with P90s that came in today. Do you want to see it? I was like, do I want to see it? Yes, I want to see it. He goes, I think it's a Goldtop. I said, cool. Brings it out, pulls it out of the box, opens the case, and it's this guitar. And I picked it up, and the moment I picked it up, because it was light, I was like, okay. Plugged it in, hit an E chord. I was like, God damn it. Guess I'm buying a guitar today. I don't have a ton of guitars, but I've got 10 electric guitars, right? Including Les Pauls and Strats and stuff like that. They're all great. This guitar is the guitar I think about when I'm not playing guitar. Most of the time I play this guitar sitting on the couch acoustically because it's so resonant. Now regarding the 125s, you can still find them. You can get them on Reverb. They run anywhere from about $1,800 to $4,000 or $5,000 depending on the year, the particular type, the desirability, the rarity of them. I went to a guitar show not that long ago and they had one with cutaway. It was cool, but it just didn't really speak to me the way this guitar speaks to me. I hope that in your quest for a guitar, you find the one you love. And you know how many guitars you need. Just one more. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you'll consider subscribing, and I'll talk to you soon.